He's been an educator for over 30 years and has been doing this toy presentation. He said from 10, 12 years ago. He doesn't quite remember how long it has been, but he started in a library one time, and they wanted something that wasn't just for the little kiddies, and he started sharing some of his information, and he said he looked up and there were 15 people standing, young people standing around enjoying what he was sharing. So he's been well experienced in that. He is also, or has, worked with Inquiring Minds, and I have never found a speaker out of Inquiring Minds that hasn't been excellent. I know that if you like what you hear today, he's going to speak again down in Renton on December 9th, which is a Saturday at 11 in the morning. If you have some children or grandchildren that you think might enjoy it, you could come hear him again and share it with them. I'm pleased to present Allan Hirsch and ask you to come on in and tell us the real toy story.
And Hogan, I said, can I bring this down? I want to show you this idea I have for a program for older kids. And she said, okay. So I sat down at the table right in the children's library, and within 10 minutes there were 15 people all standing there. What's this one? Where'd that one come from? And it kind of inspired me to continue the research. And so even to this day, I'm still looking, because as you know about history, there's always more to find out. And so I'm looking for toys. And my definition of toys is something you play with. It's not a fetish or a doll or a boat. Well, a boat could count as a toy, but things that actually do things, that had function. Historically, a lot of toys required skills. And so I'm going to demonstrate some of these toys, and then I'm going to put them on this table over here so you can try them. Now, I'm not going to put all of them over there because some of them are pretty delicate and difficult or dangerous. And those that I leave up here, you can't play with. Now, when I first did this at the Enumclaw Library, they said, you're not going to let people touch these, are you? I said, oh, it would be criminal if I showed you my toys and said, no, you can't play with them, right? Wouldn't you be mad at me? So I'm going to start off with some very, very old things. Old meaning their origins are very old. This one's probably the oldest of them all, even though I made this. But the idea came from the ancient Egyptians. They found one of these, similar to this, in a tomb of one of the pharaohs, and they didn't know what it was. What was this thing? The string, which was part of many toys, had rotted away. It was made out of natural fiber, so they didn't really know what it was until they figured out that it had a string. And so then when they put the string on it and they pulled it, it started spinning. And they said, what is this thing? They had no idea what it was. And Carol's going to tell us. What was it, Carol?
A helicopter.
No, come on. They didn't have helicopters in ancient Egypt.
At
Come on.
top.
Think about it. Is it doing anything for you?
It's humming.
It's spinning. It was a fan. It was a fan. Well, they didn't know it was a fan, and kids started making these and playing with them, and it's in some different toy books that you can make and play yourself. It's pretty simple. It was a little fan. That's when you get to try. Requires skill, though. Now, noisemakers are also a big part of toys, and this is a noisemaker made by very many different people. Native Americans, Africans, Australians. It's called a bull roarer. Sounds like a bull roaring, right? Now I have to ask you, what do you think this was for? Of course it was a toy. Kids like to make noise, but what did they really use this for? What was its original purpose?
Contact over a distance.
Sending messages? Good idea. Good idea.
That movie Hogan was in.
Right? Crocodile Dundee.
Crocodile Dundee.
You're right. It's called a bull roar, and it was used actually to frighten people. If you were out in the forest camping and you heard that sound, you'd say, I don't know what that is. And it would frighten you. So that was its original purpose, was to scare people. And I'm sorry you can't try this one because you might hit somebody with it. Now, we've all played with this one. I'm sure the pioneers had these, right? Did everybody ever play with one of these? I called it a whirly-copter when I was a kid. And it's just a little propeller, and it's been around for a long, long time. You put it in your hand and you let go of it, and it spins and it flies. They make them out of plastic, and they have with pull string devices. And well, this one got me really curious. I said, well, where did this come from? Because the origins of these toys was really what my interest was. Where did they come from? How did this get started? I couldn't find out at all until one day I was watching the History Channel, and their little pieces they put on their little 30-second little spots. There was one about this, and they said this is actually called the bamboo dragonfly. It was invented in China 1,500 years ago. How did it get to here? How did the pioneers get it? How did it make it to Europe? My theory is that Marco Polo, in his travels to China in the 1400s, brought one back. And Leonardo da Vinci got a hold of it. And he drew out a picture of what would later be a helicopter, all from this little toy. Now, I thought this was it, but it's not. I'll let you try this one too. Then I found a man from China who knew about what a real dragonfly was. The bamboo dragonfly was just the propeller on a little mounted thing with a pull string. And when you pull the string, just the propeller flies. It's very dangerous, so be prepared with your hands. Don't let this hit you now. Hands ready? Get your hands ready. I don't know where it's going. I really don't. So it flies, and that would be the actual bamboo dragonfly. But at some point in time, people put a stick on it, and then they would launch it with a stick as well. So that's an interesting version of it. Okay, another thing that I know the pioneers played with. You must have one here, right? Do you have one of these in here? It's called the buzz saw, for lack of a better name, and it's really just a large button usually. And you get it spinning really fast, and it makes a noise. Come on. Now, it's called the buzz saw for a real reason. This was actually once a saw. If you can imagine before metal, how did native people and Aboriginal people cut things? They would put a sharp rock on string and spin it. And if you can imagine if that was sharp, you wouldn't touch that with your finger, would you? You could cut other stone or you could cut wood with it. So that's how it got the name buzz saw. But it became a toy because you could just make it out of a button or a piece of wood and some string. Takes a little bit of skill, but I bet you can do it. All right. This one, everybody knows what this is called, but you all have the wrong name for it. It's a yo-yo, right? Is that what, anybody else have a name for it? In the 1920s, a man named Duncan came along and started calling this thing a yo-yo. Before that, it was called a bandolero, and it had been used as a weapon. In the Philippine Islands and in Greece, people would sit up in a tree with a heavy one of these made of stone and flick it down at somebody and bonk them in the head and pull it back up. So fortunately, it got made into a toy. Most children do not know that this was once a weapon, but it is a yo-yo, or the bandolero, as it's like to call it. Another noisemaker that I like to play, I made this one as well out of a picture from a book, is called a Gregory. And this one came from ancient Israel, and it makes a noise. And this was invented, or it had already been invented, in order to make noise during the reading of a particular story. It's the story of Esther. Anybody know the story of Esther? Anybody here Bible scholars? In the story of Esther, there was a great king, Ahasuerus, and he was married to Esther, and the king had this evil advisor, and the evil advisor decided to kill all the Jews, not knowing that Esther was also one of the Jews. And when the king found out he had this advisor, I don't know if he was killed or banished or whatever, but from that day onward, whenever they read the story, whenever the advisor's name came up, everybody would shake their Gregors so that you would never hear this person's name. And ever since I've known that story, every time I hear people talk about bin Laden or any other of these terrorist people, I say, why are they saying their name so much? Their name should never be spoken. Anyway, that's the Gregor. Oh! I wasn't going to tell anybody. Now, some of the toys were from the Native Americans, and this is my favorite. It's called a pamawanga. And you've all played with a little toy where you throw a ball up and catch it in a cup. Well, this is a variation of that, only instead of a ball, you have rings. And the idea is to throw the rings up and catch them on this stick, kind of like a spear. It takes a lot of practice and a lot of concentration, so keep your eye on the rings. That was very lucky. Sometimes I don't get it for 5 tries. And so they would gamble with this. They would have a contest. Whoever got the 5 rings on first would win whatever the prize was, whether it be a canoe or an animal hide or something like that. A little dangerous for in here. I think I won't let you try that one. Now, I know this is a Pioneer toy. Do you have one of these in your Pioneer collection? No toys? Well, now you do. This toy has got a lot of names. It's called the Hooey Stick. It's also called the Wimmy Diddle. And apparently it was given to the pioneers as they came across by Native Americans. Which tribe, I don't know. And it has a little trick to it. It has a little propeller on there, and you rub the little grooves to make that little propeller spin. And then when you get it spinning really fast, you say the magic word hooey, and you can make it go the opposite direction. It slows down, and now it's going to go the other way. Hooey. What a bunch of hooey. So that's the hooey stick, or the wimmy diddle as it's called. And I'm not going to tell you how I made it switch directions. You'll have to figure that out yourself. Another one for you to try. Another native instrument was used by every culture around the world, but this was the Eskimo yo-yo. Now it's called the Eskimo yo-yo today. What their real name for it is, I have no idea. But it was once a weapon called a bolo. It was used in hunting. They would get it spinning really fast, one way, one the other way, and then they would throw it and wrap it around an animal's legs, and the animal would trip and fall down, and that's how they would kill it. They don't need those now. They have high-powered rifles up in Alaska, so the Eskimo yo-yo became a toy, and they've learned to do all kinds of tricks with it. That's a fun one to try, and it's made out of sealskin, so if you hit yourself in the face, it won't hurt. So I'll let you try it, or at least look at it. Another noisemaker, this one came from India. Kids have all had metal ones of these at birthday parties to drive their parents crazy. But it had an interesting origin. It came from India, and people would carry these when they went out into the jungle and use them. Why? Scare the tigers away. If you have a cat, they hate noise. Just like people. So that's it's actually called a ratchet, is one name for it. And that's from India. Let's see. We talked about toys and tools. This is a tool. Let's see, how can I show you this? I'm going to have to try on the edge of this table. Need someplace to mount it. You won't be able to see. Can everybody see me way over here? Probably not. I'm going to do it on the floor then. This is a drill. You all have your skill drills and your power drills and your battery-powered drills and your electric screwdrivers. This is how the pioneers drilled holes. The Native Americans drilled holes like this too. And they would just stick their little spinning device.
Allan, would this work?
Yeah, they make it more visible. Thank you. And so then they would just get this string-powered drill wound up and start drilling a hole. If you can get it going really fast, you're good at it, which I'm not today. There we go. Now, if you held it in place, it would eventually drill. You'd have to have the point hardened by fire, which is how they harden things. They would burn it until it was really hard, and then they would drill holes through stone or whatever. Before the electric drill, this was a drill. I don't know the origin of it. It's one of the things that's pretty common in almost every culture worldwide. I may need this again. By now, you probably want to play with something, so I'm going to pass this one out. This is called the do-nothing machine, and it's been around for quite a few hundred years, and it does absolutely nothing. So that'll give you something to try while we're continuing on, if you'll pass those around. Okay, another one the pioneers also had, which I'm sure you've seen, is called the Jacob's ladder. Now, Jacob's ladder has always befuddled me. I've never figured out how it works. Lots of people have tried to explain it to me, too. It just works. It's an unusual thing that somebody created. Carol was talking about one of her relatives who was a tinkerer. Well, all the tinkerers made things for one purpose, and they ended up being something else, like a toy or a gadget of some kind. So that's the Jacob's ladder. Its origin is also unknown. It's been around so long. Now, there's a variant on the Jacob's ladder called the mountain wallet, which is just two pieces, and it shows a little trick. This is the money's under the two bars. This is fake money, of course. It's under the two bars, right? Does everybody see that? Okay. It's under the two bars, right? No, wait a minute. Now it's under the X. The money's under the X. Is that correct? Everybody saw that? Was the money's under the X? That's the mountain wallet. Kids like to show that to their parents and try to trick them. The Japanese have a variant of the ball in the cup, which I cannot do. But you're supposed to throw this ball up and have it land on that little peg and land on the side or the bottom. So it's kind of like a little trick thing they do. And the kids used to play with these kind of toys for hours and hours and hours, and they got highly skilled at it. You can imagine trying to get that little hole onto that little stick. It's very difficult. It was also played in Peru, a game called La Boca. So that's the kendama, as it's called in Japan. I'm going to keep that to the side because that's kind of dangerous too. All right, another pioneer thing. Actually, you're talking about the Pilgrims. One of the things the Native Americans gave the Pilgrims is a box like this. Maybe somebody can tell me what it is. Wild turkey. It's a turkey collar. This is how the Pilgrims learned how to catch turkeys. The Indians gave them these little boxes, and they would hide in the bushes and make the sound of a turkey. And the turkey would come closer and closer, saying, wonder who's in the bushes. And that's how people caught turkeys. The pioneers were nice to spread that all over the place. Okay, I'm going to move into another type of toy. This is what's called a scare box. You all know what a jack-in-the-box is, right? Little thing with a little crank on it. Well, before Mattel invented the little kind with the crank, people made them and they called them scare boxes, and they had no crank, no button, nothing. There's no way to open this box except if you squeeze it. I'm going to let Carol open this one. Just give it a good squeeze. No, not going to do it, huh? Just squeeze it in the middle there in the front. It's not opening for you.
No, it's not.
Let me try it myself. Maybe it's stuck. Did I have the wrong side, maybe?
I thought I felt it give. Oh, that's cute.
And I've seen them with little buttons on them as well, but it was called a scare box instead of a jack-in-the-box. How it got nicknamed a jack-in-the-box, I don't know, but that's something you can try squeezing. It's a little tight, but it has a lot to do with there's a little spring inside there. I'll let you try that one too. Spring-loaded toys are pretty neat. There's quite a few of them. And in Russia, they make spring-loaded toys that are actually like little miniature animated cartoons. This one's called the Magician, who makes the ball appear. And it has a spring-loaded device in here. They carve a lot of different toys in Russia. And I'm sure there were some Russian pioneers that brought these type of things over because they've been around for hundreds of years. This one's the bear at the well, pumping water. Once again, it uses a spring. I think I'll put those out for you to try too. There were other types. Instead of a spring, it was just a pull and push. And these were all hand carved, and they're still making them to this very day. Anybody from Russia that came over here will be very familiar with them. Were there any Russian pioneers here in the 1800s? Anybody?
We have one woman whose application said she was born on a ship off the coast of Russia.
That's pretty close. Another toy that they make is a little rowing rabbit. And the little ball at the bottom spins and the rabbit rows his boat. It's very delicate, though, so you have to be careful. I'll let you try it. Now, that's based on the most famous of the Russian toys called the pecking chickens, which is often called an American folk toy. They make them just about everywhere in the world today. But there's 5 chickens, and then when you spin the egg, they all peck. Can you see that okay? And the Russians are very clever at making these things. Okay, I like trick toys, and this is one of my favorites. It's a block on a string. Fishermen like these kind of blocks for their weights and for their floats. The trick is you can use what's called an air brake. Stop. Go. Okay, just an air brake. Okay, you want to call stop this time?
Stop.
Say, come on, keep going. That's better. All right, stop. It's just this. How did I do that? I'm going to let you figure that out yourself. That's not fair? Sure it is. It's very fair. Okay, in India, they make toys to illustrate machines. This is called the monkey on a stick. Anybody here recognize what machine that is or what it comes from? An oil rig, which is also known as a pump. Yeah, pump, or it could be a driver from a train, which is like a pump as well. That's the monkey on a stick. And this one is one of my favorites. This one came from Sri Lanka, and it's the two clowns, but when you spin them, they go up and down. But it illustrates how another very famous machine operates. Anybody? Sewing machine or an engine. It's the crankshaft on an engine. These are the pistons. So the children play with the toys in order to get an understanding of how a machine works. The Japanese have a great toy. I'm going to use your little table again here. It's called the Hammering Man. It's a stack of blocks with the biggest block at the top with the picture. And the idea is take this hammer and knock out the bottom block without knocking over the stack. Doesn't sound easy. It's not easy until you learn a little skill. Oh, didn't work. I'm going to try that again. I got to get it this time. I don't think the stack was very straight. Oh, I don't think it's a problem with that. No, it just was my skill. That's all. No, it'll be fine. It's the pulling the tablecloth trick. That's exactly what it is, and it has to be pretty straight to work. That was close. You could see I almost got it that time. One more try. The cart's moving? Try one more time. There you go. I'll leave this on here if somebody wants to try it. But that's a lot of fun, and it really illustrates. It takes some practice, and I've done it many times, so that's how I got good at it. But it's one of those things that it takes some practice. And, all right, I'm going to show you another type of toy. I'm going to sit down in this chair to do it.
Would Oriental stores have something like that?
You're not going to find these in stores. There's one place I can tell you can find some of these things. This is the first folk toy that I was given, actually, and I've learned how to make them since. And I'm sure the pioneers had these, because it's around 500 years old. He's called a lumberjack. That's one of his names. He's also called a Jumpin' Johnny. He's also called a Dancing Dan. They made them in all different shapes and colors. In the 1800s, they made them to look like African people. They did all kinds of things with them. So that's the lumberjack. And then, of course, people like to do variations on a theme. So they also make limber horses and limber frogs. I made a little limber horse. It's a little buckskin pony, actually. And instead of having them bounce on the stick, I just have them run around a little bit. So it's a little animated thing, and kids really like the animated things. Now, the animated or reticulated man, which I'm sure you've seen different versions of. At Christmas time, the Germans have these. This is actually the Jumping Johnny, where you pull the little string and his arms and legs go up. Oh, turn around, there you go. All of these are based on an ancient Egyptian design. And this one's called the acrobat. I'll do this one on the table too, so you're a little closer. And the way the acrobat works is you squeeze the bottom. Come on, you can do a flip. There you go. Now this toy's been around for thousands of years. Nice. That's the acrobat. There's quite a few different reticulated people things like that. All right, I want to show you a really cool toy. How many of you have ever played badminton? And what's that little thing called that you hit? A shuttlecock or a bird? Don't you also call it a bird? Well, this is a game that came from Brazil. It's called a paytaka, and it's played like hacky sack. Here in the United States, kids take these little bean bags and kick them with their feet like a soccer ball back and forth to each other. In Brazil, they use this. Instead of hitting it with their feet, they hit it with their hands. On the beach, they just play with it. So I'm going to hit it, so you guys have to be ready. Here it comes. Good return. So you can imagine people just playing with this. Well, I said, I want to know the origin of this. So I kept reading up, and I was reading in a book about the Hopi Indians and how they made these out of the corn husks. They would take a little corn husk and stick feathers in the end of it and play darts with it. Just throw them like a game. So basically, it's an ancient Native American thing that it's really a lot of fun. You can buy these because it's actually a very popular game in Brazil, but it's ancient as well. It's a toy. I'm sure that every time children as pioneers met Native Americans, they probably played with this kind of stuff. But it didn't last because it was made out of natural fibers and things that all just rotted away or was broken. So that's the paytaka. All right, what else have I not shown you over here? Here's another one. How's that do-nothing machine? Is it making it around? Here's another one I'll pass around. This is a scare box as well. It has a little snake in it. If anybody's afraid of snakes may not want to do this, but you just touch this little red button on the top, and you push it gently, and the snake will come out and bite you on the finger. This is ancient Egypt as well, and maybe other places. It's not a real snake. Carol, you going to be brave enough? Thank you. The oldest of all the toys is the top. People made them out of clay, they made them out of wood, they made them out of stone. The Israelites made them, and they called them dreidels. It's a game as well as a top. This is a dreidel. The Japanese and Chinese make different types. This is a top. It's also a dice. And the way it works is you take this little top and spin it on the top of this dial, and then when it lands, it'll point to one of the numbers. So it works as a dice. It'll take a while. It'll spin for a little while, and then you would be playing some kind of game. When it finally stops spinning, it'll point to one of the numbers below, and that's like their dice. There's so many different kinds of tops. All right, I've showed you just about everything up here. I haven't shown you that. Oh, this is a find. You know, people ask me, where'd you get all these things? And I say, well, there's this thing called eBay. But if you don't know what to look for, you won't find anything because you have to know what they're called. So I did a lot of research many years ago. I knew what all these things were called. And then I went on to eBay and I'd start looking back in the early days of eBay. I wouldn't even try now because they would want $50 for it. But I just paid a couple dollars for this. This is called Jack Straws. Anybody ever heard of the Jack Straw Foundation? So local found. What's a jack straw? Anybody? Pickup sticks. Except that they're not little sticks. Each one is a tool from pioneer times. So there's rakes and hoes and rifles and axes and adze and shovels and paddles and so on. That's also a game of pickup sticks. Each one has a point number on it. So this little hoe is worth 10 points and so on. This is jack straws. Before there were pickup sticks, there were jack straws. But they're a little more complicated to make, and so pickup sticks became very commercialized because all it was a stick. And I think people have always played pickup sticks. It's a very common thing. You could make your own. And that's what people got into the jack straws. Okay. I found that on eBay about 15 years ago when eBay first started. All right. For my last part of my presentation, I'm going to show you whistles. These are whistles from all over the world, made out of many different materials, made by many different peoples. And it's taken me a long time to collect these, but it's worth it because it's really fun. The first whistle I'm going to show you is made out of a nut from Hawaii called a konani nut. I was on the Big Island doing a school program, and the children were making these out of little nuts that fell on the ground, and they showed me how to make one, and so I brought some home, and I'll try to blow it for you. Takes skill. That's the konani nut whistle. I think people all over the world make whistles out of nuts because they're always cleaning the nuts out with little sticks and they blow on them to get the nut meat out, so they probably figure out a lot of whistles. This one's from India, and it's made out of the horn of a cow. This one's from a place called Tanzania. It's a little country in Africa, and it's made out of a stick. This next whistle is an Eskimo whistle made by the Eskimos. It's made out of a tusk of a walrus in the little shape of a little fish They don't use it to catch fish, but they wear them whenever they go fishing. If they're out in their kayak and they get lost in the fog, in order to find their way home, they blow their whistle. And somebody on the shore blows their whistle, and that's how they find their way home. This next one comes from a strange place called 7-Eleven, and it's made out of plastic. It's called the Oscar Mayer weenie whistle. It's kind of a silly one. Here's one from Canada made out of stone. It's a two-fish whistle. It's carved out of, I believe it's a soapstone. Very similar to the Alaska Eskimo whistle. Here's a bone whistle made by the Umatilla people. You'll probably all know where Umatilla is, right? Lewis and Clark met the Umatilla people. This whistle was made out of a turkey bone, but traditionally the native people made them out of eagle bones. And a lot of people want to know, well, how did they catch an eagle? Did they shoot it with bows and arrows? The answer is no. The way they caught an eagle is very interesting. They would dig a hole in the ground big enough for two men to lay down in. The men would lay down and someone else would cover them up with sticks and grass so they were invisible. Then they would put a dead rabbit or a dead squirrel in the middle of that pile of sticks, and they'd wait for an eagle to come to grab it. And when the eagle did, one person grabbed the eagle's legs, one grabbed the eagle's head, and that's how they caught an eagle. And they used every part of that eagle for something, and including the bones were used as whistles. All right, this is a wind whistle from way up north, used in sound effects in the theater. And this is a whistle from the days of George Washington. The soldiers had these, and they made them out of wood. Of course, this was put on a lathe and carved, but they used it to signal each other when the redcoat soldiers were marching by. Of course, they would think it would be some kind of bird, but actually it was a signal. Now, the British people made a lot of different whistles. This next group of 6 whistles were all from Great Britain. This one's a trolley whistle. This is a train whistle. This is a sailor's whistle called a bosun's pipe. And this one's called the siren. And this is the school teacher's whistle, which you've all heard at some point in our lives. And the last one is called the engineer's whistle, or the double whistle. It's 2 whistles in one, a shrieking one on this side and a really shrieky one on the other side. There's the shrieky one, and here's the really shrieky one. All right, now we're getting to the musical whistles. All over the world, people make an instrument that is called an ocarina. They make them out of clay. In Asia, they call them ocarinas. And they have 4 holes on the top, actually 5, one including the air hole. 4 holes on the air hole, and on the bottom they have 2 holes. And from that, you can get quite a few different notes.